My healthy habits.
Surprise is the only emotion that requires an interpretation.
Wherever we go.
But the real choice
We go together.
We can change that.
Is what life determines.
Thank you. Here's the thing. I love men. As a white, heterosexual, cisgender, feminist woman, it's been part of my unconscious legacy to befriend, play with, work with, date, marry, divorce, and raise boys and men. And it's my love of men that makes me scared for them. I'm deeply concerned about the state of men today. And this matters because, as all of us know, any group or society can only move forward as fast as its slowest member. And to me, this means that if men as an identity group fail to thrive, it impacts all of us. I, like many women like me, have benefited greatly from the tidal wave of advocacy, empowerment, and policy change of recent years of women's rights. Of course, there's still a ton of work to do, and I stand beside and with all women committed to using the privilege that I have as a white woman to advance issues that women face everywhere. But still, I find it insidious that even as I and my friends and sisters and daughter have marched for advancement of women, I've noticed men fall noticeably silent and behind in crucial and devastating ways. And white men, whom we rarely talk about as a group, lead the way in some shocking statistics. Men are 3.5 times more likely than women to die by suicide. And in 2016, 7 out of 10 deaths by suicide were white men. Of the 162 mass shootings, killing 1,135 innocent victims and counting, all but 3 were perpetrated by men, and the vast majority of these were white. Mortality rates from death-related overdose are skyrocketing for white men, something we don't seem to want to talk about. And men are still 2 times more likely than women to die from drug overdose. 2.2 million more women than men entered college in 2017. And globally, men and boys are lagging behind more than 50% in proficiency levels in reading, writing, and math. The wealth gap is increasing exponentially for men, particularly as unskilled labor jobs are replaced by skilled labor jobs in areas like education, nursing, and physical therapy, which are more traditionally feminine roles, and men are less inclined to take them. Vivek Murthy, the USA Attorney General, says that loneliness is an epidemic, and men suffer disproportionately from it. The notion of what it means to be a man today has become a confusing and tattered tapestry that impacts men and boys everywhere, and in fact, all of us, at home, at work, and at society. Jennifer Bosom, a University of Florida gender researcher, says that manhood is hard to earn and easy to lose, and that masculinity is more precarious than femininity. Just think about all the bad jokes and expressions out there like man up, boys don't cry, be a man, that reflect the beliefs we've held for centuries about what it means to be masculine. And when we lay over the complex realities of today's world, things become confusing and hard quickly. For example, as more women become the primary wage earner at home, it leaves many men feeling disoriented because of their internalized belief that they should be. And when men do help out at home, they often face teasing and recrimination in social situations and work situations, which results in them not taking the paternity leave that they have or choosing primary roles as caregivers. As emotional intelligence and vulnerability have become hugely important for leaders and teams everywhere in the world of work, Men who are emotionally sensitive, tender, or who cry easily face shame and bullying everywhere from the playground to the boardroom. In the digital worlds of gaming addiction and curated social identities, which elevate isolation and loneliness, that increase the number of successful suicides and untreated mental health illness in boys and men. Now, I've had front row seats to the tensions facing men with the men that I love. I've watched my now adult sons struggle to form rich emotional friendships with men, finding it almost impossible. I've navigated the tensions in my own home as my income exceeded my husband's, and I watched the impact on his esteem and confidence. I've seen my men struggle with mental health issues, only to deal with the stigma of what getting help meant because it reflected weakness and failure. I've watched my men face pressure to perform athletically beyond anything else, even when their interests lied more in areas like music and philosophy. I've noticed, especially this last year, that men that I work with increasingly keep the office door open when we meet. And I've watched male friends noticeably fall silent, even as their wives, daughters, and colleagues marched in the streets in protest of famous men accused of sexual harassment. I've sat beside my husband in chemotherapy as he battled his own inner difficulty, asking for help, even as his hair fell out and his immune system was compromised. I, like most women, have tried to help. I've used the traits that I've been indoctrinated to since I was a little girl, like caring, empathy, being kind, listening, being compassionate, and nurturing. Unfortunately, those same skills and gifts of femininity have often increased toxic masculinity, even as I've tried to help. Now, don't get me wrong. I profoundly believe that the work of redefining healthy manhood tomorrow is for men to do, not women. But I, at the same time, in the dark nights of the soul, have wondered, what is my role in helping to redefine what it means to be a man? First of all, I think it's time that we women stopped being the keepers of all emotion. Thank you. By this, I mean that many of us are trained from a young age to be emotionally fluent caregivers. I have overmanaged the feelings of men, even taking responsibility for them. I've interfered in conversations between colleagues at work and between my children and their dad and their stepdad because I could and because I thought it was my job. Doing this assumes that we women know best what men feel and how to express it, and it puts us at the center of their emotional lives, even when we do it at work and we become referred to as work wives. For me, this is sometimes bridged into the duties of care at home, like birthdays and gift giving. I'll never forget a moment many years ago when my mother-in-law called me to thank me for the flowers she had received on her birthday. I told her I hadn't sent them. Her son had. And she literally wept with joy at the unexpected gift of his thoughtfulness after 18 years of me carrying the water for him. When we expect and demand and ask men to take ownership for identifying, naming, and expressing their complex feelings, it unleashes all kinds of health and well-being. Their hearts and emotions become theirs. It's critical that men and boys learn about the skills of emotional intelligence and fluency since they're little boys. Their very lives depend on it. Another way that I've unconsciously fanned the flames of toxic masculinity is by the mothering myth. You know the one I mean, the one that says that kids need their mamas and that dads are nice to have but not integral. I did this as a mother of 3 by hustling to be the perfect parent, by doing it all, instead of letting their dad assume his own unique place in the parenting journey in his way. I felt guilty because I worked a lot, and later because I was divorced, and I used those as excuses. So what I tried to do is to become the best mother that ever existed on this earth. I curated play dates. I volunteered in school. I made sure their clothes were clean. I cooked healthy snacks. I worked full-time, and I kept a clean house. As a divorced parent who fought for joint custody because the courts do still favor women, we all benefited from their dad having equal access, primacy, and time with them. He parented differently than I did, but he did it well. Parenting is messy, and it's not for saints. And mothers aren't the only one who can caretake. Until we as a society support and expect men to be active, attentive, compassionate, careful caregivers, we will never have true gender equity. The third thing I've done that contributes to unhealthy manhood is that I've masked my own ambition and skills, especially when it comes to money. And I've seen other women do this in a variety of ways, from the soccer field to the bank. Talking about wanting to make money is unsavory for women in our society, and so we hide it. Even as it is essential to our family's safety and security. When we own our ambition, our desire to succeed, it sends a message to our daughters that they can work hard and earn money and take care of the people they love. And it sends a message to our sons that they don't have to single-handedly support the family financially, which is almost impossible to do today. Lastly, I have unwittingly contributed to toxic masculinity by believing that I could be everything for the men I love. As good as it feels to be needed, I can't be the end-all, be-all for their emotional health. Men need other men in much the same way as we women have experienced the value of communion with other women for decades, if not centuries. When men form emotional, rich, tender relationships with other men beyond the sports bar and the athletic field, it activates entire communities for them to turn to support them as they deal with life's hard times. Studies show that boys form these kinds of emotionally rich friendships as children, but they fall off in adolescence in both frequency and closeness. When men form emotionally rich, real friendships with other men, they don't need to turn to women for the answers. Their communion fortifies them. Men do friendship differently than we as women do it, but real connection, intimate connection, men to men, matters. Oh, and by the way, when men have these kinds of relationships with each other, they not only become great allies for women, they also can stand together, name, address, and fight against toxic masculinity when their coworkers, their colleagues, and their friends and family demonstrate it. They can stand together for healthy manhood. These men of tomorrow talk about healthy sex, not violence and objectification. These men resolve conflict instead of resorting to bullying. They are brave and vulnerable. They're sometimes afraid. They want they feel, and they love. True gender equity and equality means we go together. If men fail, feminism and true equality also fail. Largely as a result of the feminist movement, I have a pretty firm grasp on what it means to be a woman and on my own femininity. And I thank my forebearers for changing the world to benefit me. And I hope it continues for my daughter and yours. For our sons, I hope that we women can stand in strength and grit with men as they find their footing with grace. Women can do this work for men, but women have a critical role in redefining what it means to be a man tomorrow, beyond the limiting, toxic, and frustrating notions of the past. Wherever we go together.